Welcome back to Dukascopy TV. I have Rudi Finci in the studio with me today. He is an independent consultant and we're going to take a look at the banking sector. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
So there has been so much pressure put on banks recently, especially Swiss banks in terms of regulations, a lot of pressure from the US and globally. So do you think banks in general are preparing themselves properly, and where do you see the future for Swiss banking?
Yes, I think you're absolutely right when you say recently. I think this is the most, I would say, exposure of Swiss banking system in the international arena, which has a negative impact. Just slightly or briefly returning back to the Swiss banking history, Swiss banks have been present in the second part of the 20th century with all its glamour, if one can say. Now, in those last maybe 5 years, we have the end phase of the process, which was not maybe so known to the larger public, but has been present from already 50s or 60s. I guess you are mostly relating your question to the private banking. Now, we know that the Swiss banking sector has collapsed. But this is just the final phase. Let's say declassified documents, even from the Kennedy administration in US, that were sent from diplomatic advisors and representatives of Switzerland, have shown the interest of American fiscal authorities for everything that considers the funds that did not go under the taxing. So to return to the basic of your question, I would say that Swiss banking system has all the power to overcome such a situation. We have seen this already in the cleaning up of some banks. We know the example of the prime Swiss private bank that had to close and transfer its I would say sound operations to another newly established bank that works very well and which was bought by a bank group. So I think that the opportunity is there, especially because Swiss culture understands the regulations, and we have seen this recently that in some propositions Swiss banks wanted and authorities wanted to go over and beyond of necessary rules. So this culture combined with the new generation of bankers, I'm sure will provide an active place for Swiss banking, especially Swiss private banking, because return to the roots, not saying of the commercial and investment banking, Swiss banking is based on a private banking, and I think we have a really good moves in these last periods that it is going to adapt to such a situation.
And Benoit Cœuré said the Eurozone was out of immediate danger, but said the banking sector really needed a cleanup in order for it to avoid a Japanese stagnation. So what are your views on this?
Yes, actually he presented a very interesting speech during the last Amundi Investment Forum in Paris on 5th of July. And I have listened to it on the transmission. Unfortunately, I was not present there. I think Benoit Cœuré is a new generation economist that has a very good education and applied in the field's experience. And what he's saying, I think he's rather right. Japanese experience of this lost decade showed us actually what we experienced in the socialized economies, that non-profitable companies, whether they were financial or non-financial companies, cannot sustain on a long term. So actually by supporting this kind of companies, you are taking a chance of supporting new ones. I will not go into details. I suggest your viewers to go and check this paper, but I think he's absolutely right. He showed the similarities and the distances in between the European and Japanese situations. But what is the most important is actually to know these elements of the risks and follow them so that this does not materialize. I must say in this process we are missing more charismatic persons with great knowledge like Dominic Strauss-Kahn, and I regret very much that he's out of the political and monetary arena, if I can say, now in Europe, because he has excellent education and a good experience. I'm sure he would have put the value. Now the question is whether the leaders would have the courage to go into a real cleanup of the situation. In my own opinion, I think more people like Strauss-Kahn and Benoit Cœuré, who can envisage and direct such a cleanup system, would be a very good idea.
And looking at the US, the Fed has proposed stronger liquidity rules for banks. What are your views on this?
Yes, the regulations has always come ex post, after the event. So I think this last crisis in 2000, starting from 2008, especially in the leveraged financials, one should not forget that United States is has the roots of the leveraged economics, financials, and the 29th big world crisis started exactly with this scenario. So I view it as a good move. Now I will not go deep into this proposition, but just to mention two things. They are concerning just big banks, so the banks that have more than 250 billions under assets and 10 billions on their balance sheets of international exposures. And what is also important, they're including non-financial companies, so that a situation like we had with the subprime affair that has really infected the whole world financials, like AIG, which actually had a hidden bank inside of its structure. So I think these regulations are not bad at all, and I think one should go into these regulations with approach that regulations do not only limit but give new opportunities. And I think American financials market has been too traumatized with all these recent, and this is, I think, a very good move. I think it is a good way to put some I would say, hand onto responsibilities of a huge banks, so that they can continue to honor their engagements.
Rudi, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Do stay tuned to Dukascopy TV as we have much more coming up on the show. Goodbye for now.